So, it's been quite some time since my last video, and I had mentally committed to myself that if I did, well, not if I did, but that when I did my next video, it was going to be about what I want to talk about in this video. I found out back in June that an incredibly important individual in my life had died. He had taken his life. His name was Brent, and Brent and I first started talking back in 2006, and Brent, I couldn't say why we clicked. I know that it was part of what drew Brent to me. Brent was confined to a wheelchair, and we had first started talking on a dating website, and his profile had said as such, that he was in a wheelchair. And in our first conversation, he said, I come with wheels, right? I said, so? It didn't bother me. I couldn't sum up our relationship here. This video is probably going to be long as it is. But Brent and I stayed in each other's lives, even though our romance didn't pan out till about, the last time I spoke with Brent was in December of 2018. And he said to me that the gist of the message was that he didn't hate me and he didn't want to stop talking to me, but that he needed a break from talking to me because my presence in his life was a painful reminder of just one more thing in his life that didn't go his way. Brent had tried to kind of obliquely, distance himself from me, but in a more passive manner. kind of dancing around the subject of the fact that we hadn't worked out. And he had never really come out and say it, before. And I care too deeply about Brent to give up on him. But when someone comes out and says, I need space, I need a break, what can you do? I loved him. And I respected him. Enough to give him what he asked for. And I would check in on him from time to time, by looking at his Facebook. I tried to not be obtrusive. I didn't want to be stalkerish, or crazy, so I restricted that activity, to an amount that I felt was an acceptable compromise between giving him his space and me needing to know that he was okay. He had health issues because of his paraplegic condition, and every so often in the past he would kind of disappear, and I would call his mother, and she would tell me where he was, because he would kind of go off grid, and I would call him at these extended recovery medical centers, and he'd say, "How did you find me?" And I said, "I called your mother. You gave me your number years ago, you idiot." That kind of stuff. So I always wanted to know if he was doing all right. Couldn't tell you how frequently I peeked at his Facebook, but it was maybe twice a year. But over time, it tapered out, I guess. Not that there would have been any way that if my checking in had been more frequent, it would have changed things. But it was getting to a point where I was going to try and... I kept thinking I wanted to reach out to him because it had been several years. And he had said he would reach back out to me, but little did I know, things were not getting better for him. They were getting a lot worse for his health. So it's August now. Today is August 27th, 2023. This was back in June. And I saw on his I went and looked at his Facebook, and it said his last post was in November of last year. And the comments on the page were, people saying, "Oh, so sad what happened to Brent. Oh, I'll miss him." And you just kind of freeze seeing those kinds of words. And I searched his full name, and an obituary came up. It kicked off a saga. It kicked off a journey. The number I had for Brent's mother was no longer good. Turns out she had moved from Washington back to Montana, where her and Brent were originally from. When I first started talking to Brent, he was living in Washington State, and I was in New York. This was right before I left for college, 2007, and before I even moved to Boston. I was 22 years old at the time. Brent was a little, something like 2 years older than I was. He had a beautiful voice. He had a beautiful smile. We could talk for hours, and it was just effortless. I mentioned earlier that it kicked off a saga, and I wound up being able to find his mother's phone number. My apologies for the creepiness of internet cyber sleuthing / cyber stalking, but I'm grateful that her information was publicly available. I didn't even know that this poor woman, in addition to losing her son, she also lost her husband. the year before. And this beautiful, wonderful lady, Brent's mom, she, I called her and, she remembered me somewhat. It had been quite some time, but she remembered me, and I explained, and expressed my condolences, and we started talking, and at the point she invited me to come visit her in Montana. So that's where I am. In a little town in the northwest corner of this incredible, beautiful state. It's my last night here. I'm flying home to Boston tomorrow morning. Well, the flight's at 3, but it's a 4-hour drive to the airport. Montana's a big state. Today was Brent's mother's birthday. We drove to Coeur d'Alene. Forgive me, I'm butchering the name. Coeur d'Alene in Idaho, to go to Red Lobster, her favorite restaurant. That's where she wanted lobster for her birthday. Her other son, and his wife accompanied us. And then afterwards, we went to the cemetery where Brent was buried. I'd asked Fernie for permission. If I could. Sorry, I asked Brent's mother if I could leave something at the grave. And she said yes. It was just a little jar, like an old-fashioned kind of mason jar, but it was small and it had a kind of a locking clasp on it. I wrote Brent 2 letters, and I put a small, years ago when I worked at Disney, at Epcot, they had the Japanese department store branch, Mitsukoshi, in the Japanese section of Epcot, and I got a Studio Ghibli animated movie character, like little figurine called Gigi, a black cat from Kiki's Delivery Service, one of my favorite animes. And Gigi's in the jar to watch over him. And Brent and I both really loved Halloween a lot. So there's a small jack-o'-lantern figurine that I used to have on my desk that was like a document or photo holder. And then just a cute Halloween badge that I had bought some years ago. I sealed up the jar, with super glue, and then I wrapped it in a bag, and I buried it at his grave. Life is short. I'm okay right now, but I've been crying a lot. When I first learned about Brent's passing, I cried almost nonstop for 3 days, and then, at least 2 or 3 times more over the course of each day for the next 2 or 3 days. I was heartbroken. Brent meant a lot to me. He still does. If you're watching this video, you have someone out there who means a lot to you, and things are complicated, figure them out. Make them uncomplicated. And tell that person how you feel. Even if they don't want to hear it. And don't let 5 years pass. Because you never know what's going to happen. You may not have a chance. To let them know how you feel. To let them know that they matter to you. That you care about them. That you love them. Sometimes that's all it takes. You'd be surprised at how many people just the simple act of someone reaching out to them and saying, hey, you're important to me. I miss you. I'm thinking about you. I'm glad you're my friend. I love you. Thank you for loving me. Never assume that someone is getting all of the emotional support that they need. Don't think that you're being a bother. Or that it's uncool or overly emotional. Don't assume your loved one just knows how you feel. Don't assume that just because you told them you loved them a year ago, that it's enough. I miss you, Brent. I miss you a lot. And I love you. And I will never forget you.